Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our meetings. The meeting at the second Monday of each month, which we do it in English here. And tonight, I'm going to be the one talking a little bit about the Gospel according to Spiritism, starting chapter 10. And Nancy, our dear friend, will be here to talk a little bit about the book Our Daily Bread, message 132, if I'm not mistaken. And she'll be here shortly. So welcome, everyone. Welcome the ones who are listening to us live and seeing us live on Facebook and on YouTube, but also to those who may well be listening to this in the future. So thank you for watching and tuning in to us. And before we start, we would like to do an initial prayer. I hope the sound is good for everyone. And right after our prayer, we will invite Nancy to read a message and talk to us a little bit about it. So if you want, you can close your eyes so that we can focus even more on our Heavenly Father who created us, created this universe, and also created all of us. And we are so thankful for being here tonight, together around the teachings that can guide us, guide our minds, guide our hearts towards the goodness of the world, so that we can, together with the good spirits, with the hearts that are involved in good works, help transform this world into an even better place to live by spreading the love through our actions, through our words, through our thoughts, while we are living incarnated in this world. So God, thank you for allowing us to be here on earth at this moment, living through the trials and tribulations, but also learning to love every single moment of our lives. May your love, your light, protect and bless us, not only for tonight, but for our lives and for always. So be it. So, as I said, let's invite Nancy, and she will read a message and talk briefly about the message for us.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, the message from the book Our Daily Bread, chapter 132, and the title is In Everything. We recommend ourselves in every way, in great endurance, in troubles, hardships, and distresses. This is Paul in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 6, verse 4. The majority of the students of the gospel do not face the death of religion seriously in life, but rather only in the exterior worship. In the conception of many, it will be enough for them to earnestly attend the assemblies of faith, and with that all the enigmas of the soul in the chapter of our relations with God will be deciphered. However, the teachings of the Christ appeal towards a renovation and individual improvement in all circumstances. What can we say of an individual who is apparently contrite in religious activities, confesses publicly in his own faith, but uses profanity in the sanctuary of his home? There are many who declare themselves to be believers in the multitudes, revealing laziness in their work, despair when in pain, insatiable in happiness, unfaithful in the facilities, and blasphemous in the anxieties of the heart. With what motive would Jesus persist in the formation of his followers, only to have them light incense a few hours per week while kneeling? To attribute such matters to the Master would be to reduce his sublime principles. It is indispensable that the students improve in every way, demonstrating the excellence of the ideas that nourish them, at home as well as in the churches, in the private services as well as in the public areas. Certainly, no one will be obliged to live exclusively with their hands clasped in adoration, nor their eyes firmly fixed on the heavens. However, let us not forget that gentleness, goodwill, cooperation, and fine manners compose a divine part of the living prayer and the apostolate of the Christ. All right, so this message, first thing we have to reflect, if I consider myself a good Christian just because I came to the Spiritism Center regularly. This message is asking us to focus on our inner, the inner, our thoughts and feelings in our everyday life. I should ask to myself, how do I perform with my family? Because it's very easy to be nice and polite when I'm here inside the Spiritism Center. And how do I perform outside? How do I behave with my neighbors? And neighbors in general, not just the next door neighbors, but o próximo. How do I act when I am resentful? Good question, right? So be reminded that God sees everything, not just when we are at the church or the Spiritism Center with a nice face, or when we are with the people we love. Because also it's easy to be nice and enjoy the time we spend with the people we love. So God sees all the things. On this letter, because this reading is based on this letter that Paul wrote to the Corinthians, he said we should be commendable in all things, as much as possible being suitable at the variety of situations. And especially them, because they usually talk with the public. Another interesting thing that Emmanuel bring to us, he says, he spoke about cooperation. It means that we shouldn't put obstacles in other people's life, not only with actions, but also with words and also with negative thoughts. Even if you didn't say anything about that person, even if you didn't put any stone in his or her way. But what about your thoughts? We know that words and thoughts have a lot of power. So, If you can't help, please do not disturb. And remember, I like this sentence. What we put out is what's gonna come back to us. It's the action and reaction law. Emmanuel spoke of gentleness, goodwill, cooperation, politeness, and good manners. So let's think about it. And if we feel that we are not going in the right path, we always can pray and ask for guidance to go back to the right one. The prayer we can do anytime, anywhere, and we always can ask some help. We know we have our guardian angel. He's there helping us in any situation. So that's what I understood about this message. And again, to wrap it up, I will mention again what Emmanuel spoke: gentleness, goodwill, cooperation, politeness, and good manners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. That was really inspiring, and there are some words that you read that resonate with what we are going to talk about. So you just read it, but I'm going to read it again because I'm going to use it, which is good, exactly, so that we can have a connection between what Emmanuel said and what we are going to talk about. And you said the words are close to the end, right? Which says, certainly no one will be obliged to live exclusively with their hands clasped in adoration, nor their eyes firmly fixed on the heavens. However, let us not forget that gentleness, goodwill, cooperation, and fine manners, right? So these four things, and of course he cites many more things in the message as you read and explained. But this is really important. So we will come back to this later on, and I'm just bookmarked it here. So thank you everyone for being here. And tonight, as we do every second Monday of the month, we're gonna, for those who are online, the book is right here, but it's the same cover that I have here. So we're following the Gospel according to Spiritism, and today we're starting chapter 10, which is "Blessed are the merciful," and we're gonna do the very beginning of the book of the chapter, which is items from 1 to 4. And the title of this item that Kardec gives is "Forgive, so that God will forgive you." So that's the beginning of the chapter. And there are like a few other messages, and say reconciliation when one's adversaries or enemies in some translations, the sacrifice most pleasing to God, the speck and the plank in one's eyes, do not judge so that you might not be judged. And then some other teachings: forgiveness of offenses and indulgence. So this will be like the next our next public talks on over the next few months. We will probably get into 2022 in chapter 10 still, which is good because we need to probably we have a lot to think about being merciful, which is the title of this chapter. And I'd like to point out something that I talk probably from time to time, and I think that this is very important for us who are studying Spiritism, studying the Gospel according to Spiritism, is how well organized Kardec is or was when he did this book. And not only this book, but all the other books. But it's impressive the more you study and the more you read about it and the more you pay attention to details, how impressive it is, the his capability of putting things in a certain order that makes sense. And I'm going to point out before we start the very first sentence of his comments, right? And I'm going to go back and I'm going to read a lot here tonight because I want to really get to some points that are very, very interesting that he wrote. But also I'm going to read the parts from the Gospels themselves, because he starts by putting like 3 pieces of the Gospel according to Matthew, and then he will make a comment on that. But before I read the passages in the Gospel, I'm going to read the very first sentence of his comment, just to make to point out this organization that I'm talking about, how he makes the Gospel according to Spiritism flow in a certain way. He starts by saying this: mercy is the complement, is what makes, if we have something and then you complement the other, or you make them full, right? Mercy is the complement of meekness, because whoever is not merciful cannot be meek and peaceable, cannot have peace or cannot make peace. So if you're not merciful to another one, if you don't look at the other one and say, okay, I'm not going to be hard on you, I'm going to be like, I'm going to embrace you instead of punishing you. That's more or less what mercy is. So he says, mercy is the complement, is what makes meekness, which is being soft, being calm, being peaceful, is. But why am I saying this? I read the title of this chapter, right? Blessed are the merciful. The title of the previous chapter is Blessed are the meek and peace-loving. So he starts his comments on the next chapter saying that mercy is the complement of the previous chapter. So it is as if he divides the 2 virtues, one being peace-loving and meekness, the other one being mercifulness, which is what gives us the virtue of forgiveness. And he says, it is almost as if he says, I'm dividing these in 2 chapters, but actually these should be 1 chapter, because one without the other is not complete. So he has the mind of a teacher. He has the mind of a person who is trying to show us that I can have, for me to create a cake, and you both probably know better. I know better to eat. You know how to make it, right? So for us to make a cake, if it's a chocolate cake, for example, we cannot use only chocolate, right? Which is interesting because we call it a chocolate cake, but why don't we call it an egg cake? Because there's egg there too. Or why don't we call it flour cake? Because there's flour there too. So we have to have a name for something. So we give it a name. And then, of course, it's chocolate because the main flavor is chocolate. But if you just use chocolate, it will be just chocolate. It will not be a chocolate cake, right? So to me, is the same kind of idea. I mean, we study different pieces but one without the other does not make the whole thing whole. It will make something will be missing. So can you imagine if you're doing a chocolate cake and then you don't put flour? How is it going to be in the end? You'll have like a full stuff that you have to call a different name because it's not a cake, because without flour or without egg or without milk or without, you have to, it's something else. It's not the same thing. So what Kardec does here to me is it's like he's baking this cake, which we call gospel, right? Which we call the good news, which we call this letter where we can read and be informed of how can we get to a better place inside of ourselves, and how can we make or help this world to become a better place, and do our part in this. Let's put together a cake called the gospel according, or the gospel, or the good news, or goodness. So what he does here, and I find this to be so, and every time I'm ever since I noticed this in a lecture, like, I don't know, a few years ago or a lot of years ago, every time I read the gospel according to Spiritism or a message, I see this more and more clear. And to tell you the truth, I had never noticed this on this chapter, and that's why I'm pointing it out here. I've noticed it in other places, but in this chapter, I had never noticed the connection from the previous chapter to this chapter in the very first sentence of the chapter. And he does it but he does it without like letting us know that he's doing it. He's just writing it. But he is such a teacher. He is such a professor. He organizes things in a way that we say, when we find it out, we say, oh my God, how does this mind work? Yeah, his methodology is awesome. And for you guys who studied the medium's book, you see in the beginning of the book where he puts these things in systems and methods, and he explains it, how important that thing needs to be. And that's the science behind what he is doing. And he is a scientist, right? And he's putting all his knowledge before he was a spiritist to organize, and that's why we call him the codifier, because he organizes, he puts everything in its own place and leaves it ready for us to get that part as a fundamental basis where we can stand very strongly. But he knows that that's just the beginning. And just to finish this start, which has nothing to do with Blessed or the Merciful, but just because this opened my mind so much as I was reading, when we see the organization that he does with the books themselves, not within the books, but just the organization of the books, the Spirit's book, then the Medium's book, then the Gospel according to Spiritism, then Heaven and Hell, then Genesis. So we see the progression in how he organizes everything. So he sets up the Spiritist book as the initial book, as a book where we have questions and answers, which is usually what a child does. A child wants to know so much of the world that everything a child does is ask questions. And even if the child doesn't ask questions with words because she doesn't know or he doesn't know, she or he are asking questions with their eyes, as if they're thinking, what is this? What is this? What is this? It's such a powerful thing that's coming from the outside, and they're soaking up that information. So that's the Spiritist book. After we have that, then we have a study in organization, which is the beginning of the Medium's book. But then we start by studying how was it possible to have the Spiritist book be able to be done? Because he says, oh no, these answers are from the spirits. Okay. But in the Spirit's book, we only know about this in the second part. And then what does he do? In the Medium's book, he says, okay, now that I got this, I have to explain to everyone, how does that work for me to get this book? And the second book, the Medium's book, it's called the Medium's book, but how much of the Medium's book is actually a mediumistic book? Almost nothing. It's all Kardec. It's all him. It's him. He is there. We can feel his presence. Then, after we have this, he says, okay, now, with all this knowledge, I think that we should be able to be a better person. Because what is the point of having a new philosophy or having something that can show us a whole different world and will make us a worse person? No, we have to find a way to use this and to improve ourselves. That comes the gospel according to Spiritism. Then he comes and says, okay, now we have consequences, because for everything there are consequences, which is heaven and hell. So what if I don't use it for the right purpose? How am I going to suffer? Am I going to be able to recover from suffering? That's heaven and hell. And then, yeah, exactly. And then stories of people that come and say, hey, here's what I did. Here's how I fared in the afterlife. Did I suffer or did I not suffer? And so divided in two parts, the book. Then comes the last book, which is very interesting because the last book has a name that means beginning. So it's like as if he really wants us to go back to the beginning and start it over. So go back and restudy everything. Isn't that what science is all about? Restudying, checking it again, seeing if it's correct, testing it again, and then trying to improve on what I already learned. So can you imagine? You probably we all lived through this. We lived in a time where we didn't have microwaves, right? Then microwaves started showing up. But if we think about the first microwave that we had, and then the microwave that we have today, it's basically the same. But if we go and check how much power did it cost, how much more expensive it was, how much heavier it was, how much bigger it needed to be to have the same kind of power, everything improved. Why? Because people said, oh no, I don't want this big monster thing in my life. So they started to make smaller ones and improve on it. So it's always going back and improving it. That's what a good teacher does. He goes and then goes back, goes and goes back, so that we can fortify, we can make the basis stronger. So in the Spirit's book, in the Medium's book, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, that's exactly what he does all the time. He goes into a specific order for us to get in contact with every little piece that's needed for us to understand the whole thing. But of course, we cannot get the whole thing at once. We have to get in pieces. And that's how he organizes this, all the books, but also the Gospel according to Spiritism. But we are on chapter 10. And as he starts chapter 10 with that making the connection with the previous chapter, he does it by using the continuation of the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus is there talking to a lot of people. And it's where not the majority, but most of the moral teachings, or a lot of the moral teachings of Jesus, are compacted into. It's chapters 5, 6, and 7 of Matthew. So there's a lot of stuff that we talk about here and in churches and in temples. A lot of it's in the gospel. It's in the Sermon on the Mount. And so Kardec starts with two parts of the things that he take from to put here in this chapter. uh, are from the Sermon on the Mount. And I'm going to read both of them so that we can start off. And he says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they themselves shall receive mercy." And Nancy said something here that really resonate with this. It's the law of reciprocity, right? You said these words, I guess. That what you give life, life will give you back, which is true most of the times, even in this only this life. If we count all the lives, then it's even more true. Because sometimes we do something here, people do something here, and they don't get caught because either they die first or nobody knows what it is. But once we realize that we will not die, that we will go on, and all these things don't get unanswered, we will be called upon later on and say, "Hey, remember that you did this in the past to Nancy? Remember that you treated Adriana bad that time?" So yeah, so here it's your bill. So let's see which ones do you want to give like a little bit of money to put a little bit of like a down payment, right? So that you can, right? So we will be called upon, and people and when we say we will be called upon, what I'm trying to say, and I'm going to explain it, is there's not going to be like a person looking at me and then, oh, here it is, putting it down. No, it's my conscience. It's almost as if it's a mirror that I'm going to be looking into, and I won't be able to look into my eyes. I'm going to almost close my eyes to not to see my own eyes, because I'm going to be asking myself, why did you do this? And what are you going to do to undo what you did? And then we are going to charge ourselves and say, hey, here you have to do something. You don't need to do it back to Nancy or pay it back to her, because if, say, Nancy and Adriana are like elevated spirits, so like much more than I am, so so they're not gonna have problems with this, because they'll be so elevated that they say, oh no, that's fine. But I'm gonna be like, okay, so if I don't do it to her, right, to pay it back to her, I'm gonna do good to somebody else. So I'm gonna pay it forward instead of pay back. I'm gonna pay it forward. Okay, I received some goodness, and I want just to give it to someone else, because I know that I owe that person, but she doesn't want to receive it. So why not give to somebody else and then do something good for her? So that's usually how, even here on earth, when we get a little bit more conscious of our lives, that's how good people, if we call them good people, do. I mean, so if you don't want to do it to me, or you can't, I don't want it. I don't need it anymore. So why don't you just go and do it for somebody else? And then you go just do it for somebody else. And you feel better because, okay, yeah, now I learned my lesson. And it's not even a burden anymore, because if I'm already like paying it back to, or want to pay it back to somebody else, and it means that I'm already, and I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to leave that thing behind. And then I do it to someone else, and I not only feel lighter, I feel better. And maybe, depending on how it is that I was changed, this will not be just if I had to pay, I don't know. Let's use money as the trading here. Doesn't need to be, but if I had to pay 5,000 or 500, whatever it is, I might decide for whatever reason to give 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and it doesn't, because it doesn't weigh the same. If I can give more, I will give more. Not because, this costs something. No, I will give it more. I used your time and I wasted, I don't know, 5 hours of your time, and then I decide to do something else. They asked me to do 5 hours of work, and then I like it so much, for example, that I decide to give I'm going to be here a week because I know that I can do more and help more. And then maybe I'll do even more and more and more. So that's how we can transform this idea of paying back in paying forward, or this idea of a person like a God that's judging me, that's charging me with this, or that's imposing on me something on me, and the idea that I have a conscience, and when I develop this conscience, something changes. Something will change deep inside of me. So and this is a reflection just on this very first sentence. It's a very, very brief reflection on this, because it is very, very strong word. These are very strong words. And forgive so that God will forgive you. So when we say this word, with these words, right? And these are Jesus's words, at least with the translations that we have. And I'm going to read it. If you forgive others for the wrongs they have committed against you, your heavenly Father will forgive your sins also. So we say it is to our, let's say, low-level understanding. It is as if we are trading favors. Oh, I'll do this, then you do this for me. I'll do this, so you do this for me. So if you forgive the other, then God will forgive you. Yeah, right. To some degree, this doesn't sound right. At least to me, it always sounds kind of weird. But let's just think a little bit about the question in the Spirit's book, where Kardec asks, where's the law of God? It's in our conscience, right? The law of God is in our conscience. So what is the law of God in terms of forgiveness? Is that He forgives everything. Otherwise, we wouldn't be alive, because there's so many things that I did wrong. And I'm not doing wrong only for other people. I'm doing wrong things to me. So God is not worried about forgiveness, because the one who loves doesn't need to forgive. And I'm talking, of course, I'm talking about an utopian level of love. I'm not talking about our love. And that's one of the other things that we need to be very clear. Jesus, and I repeat this sometimes, Jesus is not trying to make it easy. Never. He's never trying to make it easy. If anything, he's always trying to make it harder. Always. He's, as we say it in English, and to the Brazilians listening right now, if you're not very, used to some of the slangs, but he is pushing the bar. So it's a very common saying in English. It's pushing the bar. And as I see this, as I hear this, I always imagine, and we just came out of the Olympics. But I have a different image, but that one is good too. But we just came out of the Olympics, right? It just finished this weekend. And every time I hear this expression, I think about the jump over the bar. That you have to raise the bar and then you jump over it. And then you raise the bar and then you jump over it. So to me is what Jesus is trying to do. When he comes and he shows us what he does, and he says that we can do what he did and more, what is he trying to say? If not, I'm raising the bar. So now I jumped over this, but I'm putting the bar a little higher so that you can jump over the next level. That's what teachers do all the time. Good teachers, good professors, they always want, or they should, I'm talking about good teachers. I'm not talking about teachers. I'm talking about good teachers always want their students to be better than them. Otherwise, nothing improves. If there's no student it's better, or no students are better than the teacher, it will be the same level or lower. So the student needs to go to push forward. They need to jump a little higher so that the next one jump a little higher, and then we keep increasing our knowledge, increasing our power, increasing the amount of who I am or how good I am at what I want to do. So Jesus is the best teacher that we ever had, although he doesn't accept it because he says, good is the Father. But I'm a teacher. When they ask, good master, no, I'm not a good, just the Father. And he doesn't say anything about master because he knows he's a master. And that's not wrong. If I am a teacher and a person say, hey, teacher, I might say, oh, I'm not a teacher. What? Are you crazy? So he is a teacher, and he's called a rabbi, Rabboni, which are teachers. So that's how they used to say. So he is a teacher, and he is trying to push their students. Who are their students? Us. We are his students. So he is trying to push us higher. So when he says that you need to love, what type of love is he talking about? He's not talking about love for like love in our level. He's not talking about love in our level. He's talking about real love. So he is really pushing the limit up. So when he says that we are just doing the same thing that everybody does, I'm sorry. You're going to have to repeat the lesson. So when he says to me, that's how I mentally organize this idea of God will forgive you, is that if we are gods, and he says this, right? He says in John that we are gods, that we have the power, we have the capability. We were created as a spark from God, right? So if we have that spark, who is the God that will judge me if I don't forgive the other? It's the God that's within me, which is my own conscience, which is the law that shows me that the same thing that I put into the world, I'm going to get it back. Just as Nancy was saying here in the beginning. So the idea that God will forgive me is the idea of the more that I become like God, I will forgive more and I will need less forgiveness because I will notice that I am getting closer to God. I'm getting closer to the law. I'm getting closer to not doing something wrong. But the more time I pass on judging others, not being merciful to others, whenever something happens to me, I will say, oh, I treated that person badly. How will I be treated then? Why should I be treated better than the way that I treated him? Why? Then, all of a sudden, the other day I was talking to one of my daughters, and we were talking about, things that happen in her work and so on. And then she was saying, oh, but this, this person did this and this person did this. And then, in relationships, this, and then I would always do this. I would always do this. And I'm silent. I'm just listening, right? I'm just listening. And then all of a sudden, then I was silent, but at the same time, I was like silent, but saying like small things. Just then all of a sudden, she says, oh, but I shouldn't say that. Because what if I That's it. That's the magic thing. What if I? Because it's very easy for us, right, to do unto others what we want to do. It's very easy because, and we don't even notice that we are doing, because it's just me, right? In a very simple example, right? I wear glasses since I was 7. So that's when I started wearing glasses. I don't know about you, but it's been more than 40 years now that I've been wearing glasses. So it didn't happen, like it doesn't happen that frequently anymore. I don't know why, but it was common to me, during a time in my life where I didn't have my glasses in my face, and I would fix my glasses without having my glasses in my face. I would like do this, and then I noticed that the glasses are not there, or yeah, and then I'd try to do this, and oh, my glasses are not here. And every morning, the first thing that I do is put my hands to the side to grab my glasses, and then if I had just slept with my glasses, for example, I'll do the same thing, but my glasses are on my. So these things that we do without even thinking, and we might do to some other people without even noticing that we're doing, right? If let's say we are the type of person that very like quick with words, and we just quickly say stuff, right? And sometimes it might be hurtful, sometimes it shouldn't be said, and then a person asks something, and then I say it and said, oh, why did I open my mouth, right? It's just natural. And what if somebody says it to me? How am I gonna feel? Should I condemn the other person because she did it? And I do it. So this kind of balance that we need to find, this kind of scale that we need to put our actions and other people's actions, is what I call the balance of forgiveness. The idea that if I'm not perfect, why should I be imposing on others perfection? Why should I be imposing on them? A person that's cynic might do because I want to do it, and that's true. Nobody is saying that you can't do it. We're just trying to organize our thoughts and the behavior of our trying to improve our behavior, or the behavior of our society, starting with me. We're trying to think about how to improve that. And it's, like I said, Jesus is not worried about like leaving us at this level. No, he's worried about like pushing us up or pulling us up, because he's up there. So he's pulling us up, raising the bar. But we are almost doing the opposite. We are almost like trying to pull the bar down the more that we can, and so that we can tell him or tell whoever and say, hey, look, the bar is right here and I'm doing it okay. Yeah, but you're not doing it okay anymore, because now you know that the bar is not here. You're eluding yourself. You're masquerading it because the bar is already here and you already know it. So who are you trying to blame? Who are you trying to put the blame on? Why are we doing this? And that's how I feel and how I see when we don't, or when we play the hard card of unforgiveness, of not forgiving others. It is as if we are putting more and more fuel on our own pride, on our own selfishness, because I can do it, and then we're not worrying about or thinking about the what if that I just said. And what if it happened to you? The problem here is that we will always, and that's almost human nature, but we will always try to find an excuse. always, or almost always, we will try to find a justification for our actions, an excuse for us to do that to that other person, to not to forgive, or to make a comment, or to say this or to say that, and said, oh no, we will be called out or called upon. And why did you do this? Oh, I did this because of this. I did this because somebody else taught me. I did this because he did it to me, or I did this because my boss this. And what about your responsibility? What about our responsibility of stopping evil where it should be stopped? Because it's usually putting the responsibility on other people, on other things, and not on ourselves. I've been repeating this sentence for the probably the last few weeks in stuff that I've been talking with people, or even public talks like this one, that I find to be kind of funny, and I repeated it here a few times. And it says, if you're in a situation in your office or wherever it is, and that everything is going wrong, and you're still laughing, it's because you already know who to blame. So if it comes to you, you know who you're going to blame for what's going on, and then you're clean. Is it? So it is as if we are in that situation, right? We are always plotting in our minds to give excuses for stuff that we are doing wrong. And we will always find it, be it like using a sentence that makes people laugh, and then take the attention off the problem, just make it laugh, or we find someone who to blame and say, oh, that person did this, that's why I did. So we will always find a way. So I don't know if you have noticed, but when we have a situation that's whatever the situation is, the person stole a bread, or if you go interview that person that stole the bread, right? How many times, 1 out of 100, that person will say that he made the wrong thing? Maybe 1 in 100, maybe 2 in 100. We are always right. We are always right. But the question is, are we always right? So that's why it is so hard to raise the bar, because we don't accept that we are wrong. We don't accept that we are doing stuff that we shouldn't be doing. The moment that we grow up, the moment that we leave being childish, that we leave that time of our lives where we were children, because we saw and we see people that are 80 years old, they're still a child. We see men, they're still child, right? They're still children, and they can't accept, or they just, and I'm not saying child, or as in what Jesus says when he says, oh, let us all be children, so that the ones who look like children will inherit the world, and so on. No, it's not that idea of, that I was saying in the beginning here, where children are always looking to learn for something. No, it's that behavior of when you get a no, then everything is wrong and it should always be your way. So it's in that sense of being a child. And that's some of the times it's how we behave. So when we don't forgive someone, why don't we forgive? And look, we have no time to go into every single detail. And of course, there are situations that when I'm saying forgive, I can clearly see in my mind, there are things that some people call forgiveness, but they're not talking about forgiveness. They're talking about something else, right? For example, right? Someone did something wrong to me, and I go and ask for forgiveness, right? And I said, the person says to me, or I say to the other person, right? If the person came to ask for my forgiveness, oh, see, I forgave that person. and I tell everybody that I forgave that person. That's a different type, and it's not the same kind of, because I still carry that thing that the other person did to me. And 30 years later, when the person comes to me to do something and does something and said, remember what you did last 30 years ago? That's not forgiveness. We're still holding the grudge. So that's not forgiveness. Also, forgiveness is not, see, if you owe a debt to someone physically, money-wise, or whatever, and you still need it, and the person, oh, forgive me, I can't pay you. Yeah, I forgive you. You can't pay me now, but you still owe me that. It's not about this. We're not talking about like small things. We're talking about things of the heart. We're talking about things of the soul, of real serious stuff. We're talking about the forgiveness of a person who had their or small things, but that you told a lie about the person, and then the person later on comes and say, oh, forgive me, I don't know what I was thinking. I had this idea and I wanted to hurt you at that time, but now I see that I shouldn't have done it, and I'm going to try to, would I be able to forgive a person that did that to me? I don't know. And that's the type of thing that Jesus is trying to make us think about. That's when we get to the last one, when Peter, and then so we're going to finish here, and without even going too much into what Kardec said, and that's why I always say, read the chapter, read the items, because we come here to talk, and we talk 30, 40 minutes about a topic. It doesn't cover everything. There's so many details, so much stuff. But then comes Peter and says, if your brother has sinned against you, that's Jesus saying. So he says, if brother, saying to the disciples, if your brother has sinned against you, did something wrong to you, go to him and make his wrong known in private. In private. Don't go out and tell everybody. And Kardec talks about it, that when he's in item 4, when he's saying, you just don't go out there and then boast in yourself for being, oh, I'm such a wonderful person, I forgave everyone. That's start of the teaching here. But between you and him, it's between us. But no, apparently our pride is so big that we want everybody to know that I'm a good person. But I'm not going to go into that path. If he listens to you, and that's a big thing here. That's a big thing here, because, and that's why it's both ways, right? First, for me to ask for forgiveness, I have to be humble. The other person to accept also needs to be. So it is hard for both. It is hard for both, because one will remember in one way, the other one will remember the other way, and you don't forget these types of stuff. But because the scar will be there, right? If I cut my arm, the scar will be there. I may not even remember what caused it, but when I look at it, I said, oh, I had something happened. It doesn't need to be bad, because once it's scarred and it's there, and that's it. Jesus will never forget that he was crucified. There's no way for him to forget that. It happened, and he was there. He saw, he spoke to Pilate. He spoke to a lot of people. He carried the cross. He will always remember that. He will remember the people, if he saw their faces, who lashed him out. He will remember the ones who helped him and the ones who treated him badly. There's no way you can forget these things. But it doesn't mean that the feeling is a bad feeling when you remember. You remember as a fact, as you were watching something, not from you, but from other people. You're watching it. Otherwise, it's not forgiveness. True forgiveness. I'm not talking about our forgiveness yet. I'm talking about the push the limit that Jesus is trying to do. So that we can finish, if he listens to you, you will have gained a brother. Then Peter approached him and said, Lord, how many times? And that's the big teaching, right? How many times shall I forgive my brother when he has sinned against me? Up to 7 times? And he is already putting like a big number. 7 times, it's a lot of times. Can we imagine? I mean, I'm just going to put this image here. I'm sitting by Nancy or Adriana, right? I'm sitting, she's sitting here. And then I poke her arm once. Yeah, Adriana already said, I don't forgive you. For once. For doing one. Imagine 7 times. And we are talking about poking the arm. We're not talking about serious stuff. Now imagine that Jesus said, 7? Oh, no. It's 70 times 7. So I should poking Adriana 490 times. And of course, that these numbers are just numbers. They're, of course, that what we understand, there should be no limit. But even just by putting the numbers into stuff, we see how Jesus is really like trying to bring us up there, right? So it is something that we need to strive to. It is something that we need to work on. It is something that we need to really do it like slowly. But if we want to be an Olympian of the gospel, we need to really do it. We need to really put our effort into it, because it is not only necessary for the world to become a better place, that we love more, that we forgive more, that we have more mercy, that we are more peaceful, that we are meeker, that we are less resentful of other people, that we have all these good things within us, but that when we get there, we know that we can get a little more, and then we can get a little more and a little more. I mean, this year I saw, by watching the Olympics, you see how much effort these guys and these girls put into being there, and how thankful they are. Even those who don't get a medal, how thankful they are that they are there and that they put the effort to be there. Yeah, they had the big opportunity of being there, of sharing this big moment with a lot of people, right? So it's the same idea here, being around the gospel in this sense, right? It should be an honor for us. It should be something that we should strive to. And even if we don't get the medal, which is something that we should aim for, but even if we don't get the medal, we will say, we did it. We put the effort in. And that's what Kardec says, right? Says it's about the effort that we put to make ourselves better. It's not necessarily for reaching it, because we don't even know how much we can reach. We just know that we can reach someplace. And if we put the effort, and if we keep pushing ourselves forward towards the new bar, the new limit of the bar, even if I don't get to that height, if I get a little lower, but if this lower was better than my previous lower, we will be better. And that's the big goal that we need to. And we can never be satisfied, but we can be proud of having accomplished something. But we can only be proud of having accomplished something if we really strive to do the best that we can. And with this, once again, I invite everyone to read the message. And I got so into this that I forgot to mention one part of the message from Nancy. But you can also read it later, 132 from Our Daily Bread. Here's the book. And while she was speaking, the book was also here. And items 1 to 4 from chapter 10 of the Gospel According to Spiritism. So I invite everyone to read it, reread it, and let's be always more thankful to God and put our efforts in being more peaceful, peace-loving, but also merciful to others, if we want ourselves to be able to forgive ourselves once we make a mistake. And with this, we'd like to invite everyone to keep coming here. We are already open. On Saturdays, we are open. Our meetings always start at 7. They are in Portuguese, but we are open. We are on Saturdays. We always have the meetings online too. So if you can't come, if you want to watch it, there will always be here. This weekend we're going to have our dear friend Jussara from our canteen here. She will be here with us talking. It will be a very good talk. We were discussing what she wanted to talk, and it sounds very interesting. Then we will have Rafael from G2 next week, the week after, and probably Fatima will be here at the end of the month. So we're gonna have very good talks on Saturdays. And of course, on Mondays, we always have our dear friends, Adriana and Nancy and Shirley's, and they're always here. And we have to thank them always for keeping this work up as they've been doing it. And we are on vacation for the other meetings of the week on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Wednesdays. And we will be back to those meetings in September. Very likely. And I think that's it for tonight. Once again, I'd like to couldn't see if anyone left a message or no, but if you did, thank you. And thank you for watching later on. If you're watching this in the future, for sticking to us. And with this, let's do our final prayer. Let's remind everyone that one of the things that we can do to help ourselves and our family to reach these goals is to read the gospel or read a good message every week in the house, usually at the same time, with the family if possible, at the same time, the same day, so that we can get a little bit of a discipline on doing these types of things, the same way that we need to be disciplined to do good work, to do whatever so it's important. And so we can read like a message from our daily bread, can read a message from the gospel. If we're more in tune with the Bible, we can read the Bible, or we can read a book with stories that have like good things in it, and everybody discusses, and we think about how we can use that in our lives. And the gospel, according to the gospel at home, or the God at home, as some people call it, it's not for the other. I find it to be very important, because we're doing the God at home, the gospel at home. And then I open the message, and the message says, the most important observation is that Adriana made a very big mistake today. No, it's about my mistakes and not about the other person's mistakes, which sometimes, it's right? Because, yeah, right? How easy it is. And as I was reading the items for this chapter that we're going to study in the next few months, one of them is exactly the speck, right? The little piece of thing in my eye, right? I see the little piece of thing in the other person's eye, but I don't see the big thing in my eye, right? So it's the same thing. So with the God at home, or gospel at home, the message is not for my husband, my wife, my daughter. No, the message is for me, for the one who is doing, not to point to the others, right? So this is one important thing that I always like to think when we're reading or studying something that has some ethical teachings. It's always for me. It's always for the person who is reading, not for the others. And with this, let's do our final prayer, inviting everyone to keep the good thoughts and raise our minds even more to God, and at this moment to remember Jesus and think about him. Think about the times that he was here physically with us around 2,000 years ago, teaching us, showing us the way, showing us how to love one another, how to treat people, and then if we can mimic him and ask for his blessing, so that he can, in our daily lives, show it to us how to better behave, how to better act, how to have better thoughts, and circle the world and embrace the world with this message that brings us so much joy and so much power to continue throughout the trials and tribulations of our lives. So, Jesus, thank you for blessing us, for giving us the chance, the opportunity to feel your love for us and to remind us every day how grateful we need to be alive, to be here, learning and progressing. May your love be with us, be in our minds, in our hearts, in our actions, so that we can spread your love, not only by talking to other people about you, but by loving other people like you love us, like you loved us, and like you will always love us. May your love be with us, with our family, with our friends, now and forever. So be it. So that's it for tonight. Thank you, folks, for being here, and I hope we can see each other very, very soon.